48 hours after he took the money, the cop stopped existing. Not dead, not alive, not suspended, not transferred, just gone. His locker sat open like a mouth. His shield number stayed on the roster for a week. His wife swore she heard his key in the door. But the city had a way of swallowing men who thought they could take from Harlem and keep their hands clean. And the last place anyone admitted seeing him was a block where the streetlights never felt bright enough. Cut to Harlem, Harlem late night. The avenue is glossy with rain. Tires whisper past puddles. Steam rises from a manhole like the neighborhood is breathing. One main corner controls everything in this story. A small stretch of 125th, where the clubs spill music onto the sidewalk, and the numbers runners move like they belong there. Where a man can buy a drink, buy a lie, or buy silence. The police presence is steady. Not aggressive, steady. A patrol car sits half a block off, engine ticking. A pair of uniforms leans against a storefront gate, pretending they're just watching traffic. A plainclothes man stands under an awning with a newspaper he isn't reading. Before Bumpy acts, control belongs to two forces. First, the precinct's street squad. They decide which dice game gets broken up, which club gets raided, which corner gets cleaned right before a rival crew needs breathing room. Second, the Underworld's arrangement, the invisible schedule. Who runs the numbers on which block? Who gets a cut from the backroom cards? Who's allowed to speak to who? On paper, the law runs the street. In reality, the street runs the law, and the men who survive do it by understanding one thing. Harlem does not operate on one set of rules. It operates on agreements. That night, a new agreement is about to be signed. It won't be written. It won't be witnessed, but it will cost a man his name, a back room, low ceiling, a single bulb, the smell of cigar smoke and damp wool. Bumpy Johnson sits with his coat still on. He doesn't fill the room with movement. He fills it with quiet. Across from him, a runner talks too fast, eyes darting. He says the cops have been taking more than usual, not the normal protection, something else. A new man, a cop with ambition, a cop who wants to be paid twice, once by the city and once by Harlem. Bumpy listens. He doesn't nod, he doesn't interrupt. When the runner finishes, Bumpy asks one question. How much? The runner swallows. Too much. Bumpy exhales once. Slow. He looks past the runner like the answer is somewhere on the wall behind him, then he speaks almost to himself. Too much makes men sloppy. The runner waits for instructions. Bumpy doesn't give them. He stands. He adjusts his cuffs. He walks out. The room is left with smoke and uncertainty. The next night, the raid comes early, not a full raid. Not sirens, just 4 men in plain clothes and hard shoes. They push into a bar that pretends it's quiet. A piano stops mid-note. A glass pauses halfway to a mouth. One of the cops smiles like he's enjoying the attention. He doesn't ask for papers. He doesn't ask for ids. He walks straight to the back curtain and pulls it aside. A card table. Cash. A deck that never leaves the neighborhood. He turns to the bartender. You running a club or a bank? The bartender says nothing. The cop takes a handful of bills from the table. Not as evidence, not as a seizure, as a message. He tucks it into his coat like it's his own. Then he leans in. Tell Mr. Johnson I'm tired of being the last one paid. The bartender looks at the floor. The cop pats the bar top twice, like a friendly goodbye. Then he leaves. Outside, the music starts again, but it's not the same. No one knows if that was the end of it or the beginning. The following afternoon, a man comes to Bumpy's place of business. Not a uniform, not a runner, a respectable face, hat clean, shoes polished. One of those men who can cross a street without anyone noticing. He tells Bumpy the precinct is split. Some cops want to keep things predictable. Some want to squeeze until Harlem bleeds. And this new cop, this ambitious one, has friends, not on the street. Upstairs, the respectable man doesn't say names. He doesn't need to. He says if he keeps pressing, somebody will crack. Bumpy's eyes stay on the man's tie knot. He asks, is he looking for a big score or a big name? The respectable man hesitates. That's the trouble, he wants both. Bumpy nods once. The respectable man leaves. Bumpy remains still, because big scores can be paid. Big names can't. Night again, another back room. Different building. 2 men sit across from each other, both pretending this is casual. The cop is there now. No uniform. A collar turned up against the cold. His hands are clean. His fingernails trimmed. He tries to speak like a businessman. He says he can make problems go away. He says he can steer the heat. He says he can keep the squad off certain doors. He doesn't say bribe. He doesn't say extortion. He talks like he's selling insurance. The man across from him is not Bumpy, just a messenger. The messenger asks, what do you want? The cop leans forward, voice low. I want a weekly number, I want it on time. I want it to come through me. The messenger says, "You're new." The cop smiles. "New men get hungry." The messenger watches him carefully. Then the messenger reaches into his coat, a thick envelope, cash, too thick to be casual. The cop's eyes shift, just once to the door, then he takes it. He weighs it in his palm like he's judging if it's real. He says, "Tell Mr. Johnson we understand each other now." The messenger doesn't smile. He says, "We'll see." The cop laughs softly. "Yeah," he says, "we'll see." They stand, they separate, and for the first time the cop feels like he's won something. He doesn't know he just stepped into a story with no exit. Later that night, word reaches Bumpy, not the cash, that part is expected. The detail. The cop used a phrase while leaving. "Tell Mr. Johnson we understand each other now." Bumpy hears it and stays quiet. A man nearby tries to lighten the air. "He just wants to be paid." Bumpy doesn't look at him. He says, calm, measured, "No, he wants to be obeyed." Silence. Bumpy stands and puts on his hat. Someone asks where he's going. Bumpy answers with 4 words. "To return his education." No one laughs, because in Harlem, education can be expensive, and the price is rarely paid in cash. The next day, Bumpy arranges a meeting. Not in a club, not in a back room, somewhere neutral. A small diner off the avenue. Clean counter. Bright lights that make people feel exposed. The cop arrives late like he wants to set the rhythm. He slides into the booth, coat still on. He looks around, checking faces. Bumpy is already there, no entourage, no theatrics, just Bumpy, a cup of coffee, and a look that never rushes. The cop tries to smile. "Mr. Johnson," he says like he's greeting an equal. Bumpy doesn't smile back. He says, "You took money that wasn't yours to take." The cop's jaw tightens. He says, "It's how things work." Bumpy's eyes don't move. He says, "It's how things worked before you got greedy." The cop leans in, voice sharp. "Greedy, you're the one running half of Harlem." Bumpy takes a sip of coffee. Sets the cup down quietly. He says, "I run agreements." The cop scoffs. Bumpy continues. "You broke one before you learned it existed." The cop shifts, uncomfortable now. Bumpy reaches into his coat and places something on the table. Not a gun. A smaller envelope. Thin. The cop stares at it. Bumpy says, "That's your money back." The cop looks up, confused. Bumpy says, "Take it and walk away." The cop blinks like he didn't hear right. Bumpy adds, "You keep your badge, you keep your life, you keep your wife from crying in public." The cop's pride flares. He pushes the thin envelope back. "I don't want charity," he says. Bumpy's face stays calm. "It's not charity," Bumpy says. "It's a door." The cop's voice drops. "You think you can scare me in a diner?" Bumpy finally looks directly into him. "No," he says. "I think you scare yourself." A waitress passes, refills water, doesn't look at their faces. The cop slides out of the booth. He doesn't take the money back. He leaves it on the table like an insult. And as he walks toward the door, he says the sentence that changes everything. "I'm not walking away. Next time I come, it won't be for payment. It'll be for you." The bell above the diner door jingles as he exits. Bumpy doesn't move. He watches the door swing back into place. Then he speaks softly to no one. "Now we're talking about pride." That same night, the cop meets with someone in his own world. A supervisor. A man who wears authority like it's stitched into his skin. They don't meet in an office. They meet in a parked car, engine off. The cop talks fast. He says he has a way to bring down Bumpy Johnson. He says he can make an arrest that will look good in the papers. The supervisor listens, unimpressed. Then the supervisor asks, "And how do you plan to do that?" The cop hesitates, just a fraction. He mentions an envelope. He mentions weekly payments. He mentions locations. He doesn't say he took the money, but he says enough. The supervisor's face doesn't change. He says, "You're playing a dangerous game." The cop insists. He says, "I can handle it." The supervisor looks at him for a long moment. Then he says, "You already can't." And in that silence, the cop realizes something. He's not just squeezed by Harlem, he's squeezed by his own side. If he fails, he's useless. If he succeeds, he's exposed. The supervisor opens the car door. Before stepping out, he says one last thing. "Don't bring trouble to my precinct." He leaves the cop alone in the dark car, breathing hard, because now the cop knows the truth. He isn't protected, he's expendable, and expendable men make reckless decisions. The next morning, the cop goes back to the street. He doesn't wait for approval. He doesn't wait for backup. He decides to create leverage. He starts picking up Bumpy's runners. One by one, not arresting them, holding them. A night in a cell, a beating in a hallway with no cameras, a whisper in the ear. "Tell him I'm done negotiating." By late afternoon, the message reaches Bumpy, not once, 3 times. Different mouth, same sentence. Bumpy doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't slam a table. He just asks, quiet, "Is he alone in this?" A man answers, uncertain. We don't know, Bumpy nods. That we don't know hangs in the room like smoke, because if the cop is acting alone, he can be handled. If he has backing, mafia money, precinct politics, city pressure, then the street shifts. And Harlem hates a shifting street. Bumpy takes off his gloves, sets them down neatly. He says, bring him his money again. Someone says he refused it. Bumpy replies, then bring him more. The room goes still. Bumpy continues. Greed is a door, pride is a wall. We'll find which one he lives behind. No one argues, they just move. And somewhere in the city, the cop feels the air changing without knowing why. 2 nights later, same main corner, same wet pavement. Same steam from the street. A black car idles half a block away, not flashy, just heavy. Inside is an envelope thicker than before. The cop arrives alone. He tells himself it's smart. No witnesses, no complications. But his eyes keep scanning. Doorways, rooftops, reflections in windows. A man steps from the shadows, not Bumpy, a messenger again. The messenger holds the envelope out. The cop takes it quick. He tries to sound in control. Tell Johnson this buys him time, he says. The messenger doesn't react. He says, Mr. Johnson didn't send this to buy time. The cop pauses. What's it for? He asks. The messenger steps closer, close enough that the cop can smell cigarettes on his coat. It's to see what you are, the messenger says. The cop forces a laugh. I'm a cop, he says. That's what I am. The messenger's voice stays flat. No, he says, you're a man with a price, and men with a price get purchased. The cop's smile fades. He grips the envelope tighter. Then the messenger says the line that makes the night colder. Count it. The cop looks at him. Right here, right here. The cop hesitates, then opens the envelope, bills. Lots of them. He licks his thumb, starts flipping. 1, 2, 3, and then he stops. Because tucked inside between the bills is something that isn't money, a small strip of paper, not a note, a name, his badge number, his home address. And beneath it, written clean, we can find you. The cop's throat tightens. He looks up, furious. Is this a threat? The messenger shrugs, almost bored. It's a fact, he says. The cop starts to speak, and then he sees Bumpy, not stepping from the shadows, not dramatic, already there, leaning near the corner like he belongs to it. Hands in his pockets, hat pulled low, watching like time is on his side. Bumpy doesn't approach. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply says, calm enough to be mistaken for polite, You didn't take the door. The cop tries to hold his ground. He lifts his chin. I'm not scared of you. Bumpy nods once. I know, he says. That's your problem? Silence stretches. Cars pass at the end of the block, a horn in the distance. A woman laughs somewhere, too loud. Bumpy speaks again, still soft. You want to be obeyed, he says, so I'll tell you something you can obey. The cop's eyes narrow. Bumpy continues. You'll return that money tonight. The cop laughs sharp. And if I don't? Bumpy doesn't move. He says, then you'll disappear. The cop's face hardens. You can't do that, he snaps. Not to a police officer. Bumpy's voice stays even. You already did it to yourself, he says. The moment you thought your badge made you untouchable. The cop looks around, searching for someone to intimidate. There's no one obvious, just the street, just the dark. He tightens his grip on the envelope. I'm keeping it, he says. Bumpy nods again. Then keep it, he says. And keep walking. Bumpy turns slightly like the conversation is finished. No threat shouted, no gun shown, just dismissal. And somehow that dismissal lands harder than violence. The cop stands there a moment longer like he's waiting for something to happen. Nothing does, so he leaves fast, not running, but close. He tells himself he won, yet his footsteps don't sound victorious. They sound rushed. The next day, the precinct hears a rumor. The cop has been asking questions. Who is Bumpy talking to? Which Italians are in town? Which bars are protected? Who's paying who? He's digging like a man trying to build a shield out of paper. Bumpy hears and does not panic. He does not send men to shout warnings. He sends one message. To one person, not a threat. A simple sentence delivered through a calm mouth. He's not ours anymore. That's all. And in Harlem, that sentence does something to the air. It changes who answers calls, who returns favors, who opens doors. Suddenly, the cop's friendly bartender won't make eye contact. Suddenly, the doorman at a club pretends not to recognize him. Suddenly, the information he used to buy is no longer for sale. No violence, just isolation. The cop tries to lean on a runner for a name. The runner looks at him and says nothing. He tries to press a woman outside a beauty parlor. She shrugs like she can't hear. He tries to corner a small-time dealer. The dealer smiles, nervous. I don't know nothing, the dealer says, and for once it sounds true. The cop begins to realize what Bumpy is doing. Bumpy is making him invisible, not dead, not arrested, just separate. And a man who is separate in Harlem is a man walking without protection. The cop's final 2 days are remembered in fragments. A neighbor says she saw him leave his apartment at night, not in uniform, pacing like he couldn't sit still. A bartender says he came in alone, drank fast, and stared at the door the whole time, as if expecting an old friend or an old debt. A desk sergeant says the cop called the precinct, asked for his supervisor, then hung up before anyone answered. Twice. Then there's the last confirmed sighting. A cab driver claims he picked him up near Harlem's edge. The cop gave an address, then changed it halfway there, then changed it again. The driver says the cop kept touching his coat pocket like he was checking for something. Money, a gun, a badge, maybe all three. At a red light, the cop told the driver, just keep going. The driver asked, where? The cop said, away. Then the driver says the cop paid and got out before the destination. Walked into the night with no plan. After that, the timeline breaks. What is certain is simple. He did not report for roll call. His supervisor didn't call his wife at first. He waited. Because missing cops create questions, and questions create attention. But by the second day, the precinct could not hide it. A man was missing. A man with a badge. A man who had been seen leaning too close to Harlem's business. They searched, not like they search for civilians. They searched with the embarrassment of men who know the city is laughing behind their backs. They checked hospitals, jails, morgues, nothing. They checked the river. They checked abandoned buildings, nothing. And while the precinct scrambled, Harlem watched quietly, because Harlem understood something the city refused to say out loud. A cop can disappear two ways. He can be taken, or he can be erased. The disappearance doesn't just frighten the cops, it fractures them. A few officers get angry. They want revenge. They want raids. They want headlines, but others get careful. They start declining overtime in Harlem. They start choosing different streets to patrol. They start accepting that some corners are not worth the trouble. Inside bars, men speak in half sentences. Did you hear about? Don't say it. At card tables, the dealing slows when a door opens, not because they see police, because they don't know who might be listening. Even Bumpy's own people feel it. They aren't celebrating. They're watching, because a missing cop brings heat, and heat attracts enemies. Rival crews whisper that Bumpy has gone too far. Italian gangsters, men who do business by rules, raise an eyebrow, not because they mourn a cop, because a disappearing cop disrupts the balance. Balance is profit. Chaos is danger. A messenger brings Bumpy a report. Some people are nervous, he says. They think the precinct will come down hard. Bumpy listens. He asks, did I touch the precinct? The messenger hesitates. We don't know. That phrase again, we don't know. Bumpy stands at a window and looks down at the street. He says almost gently, then we act like they will. He doesn't order violence. He orders discipline, no loud spending. No careless talk, no unnecessary movement. Bumpy's method is simple. If the city is looking for chaos, Harlem will show it order. And that, more than gunfire, makes the city uneasy. The precinct's reputation takes the hit, because the questions don't stop. If a cop can disappear, what does that mean for control? And if he disappeared because he took money, what does that mean for integrity? The supervisor who warned him earlier keeps his face blank, but his eyes look tired. He knows what people are thinking. That the cop wasn't just missing. He was punished, and punished publicly, not with a body, with a mystery. Mysteries have longer lives than corpses. They keep moving through bars, through court hallways, through prison tiers. Men repeat the story because it has a clean shape. Cop takes bribe, cop vanishes, 48 hours. That time stamp becomes a drumbeat, a warning you can measure. It changes behavior. A patrolman hears it and decides not to shake down a runner. A detective hears it and decides to lose a file. A crooked cop hears it and decides to take smaller bites, because small bites don't get you noticed. And noticed men disappear. Years later, old heads in Harlem didn't argue about whether the cop was dead. They argued about what was worse. Death is an ending. Disappearing is a message that never stops talking. They'd sit in barbershops and say, "You remember that cop who thought he could tax Bumpy?" They'd say it like they were remembering a storm, something you survive by respecting. And Bumpy's name grew in the telling. Not because he bragged, and not because he had to. Because Harlem watched a man with a badge step into an agreement he didn't understand, reject the one chance to walk away, and then get erased from the street like chalk in rain. No speech. No headline confession. No courtroom drama. Just the simplest lesson Harlem ever taught. Power isn't who shouts the loudest. It's who can make a man vanish without lifting a hand. And in the years that followed, whenever a new cop came uptown hungry, somebody would lean close and whisper, "Remember 48 hours." and Harlem did.